Hi, this is Mark and Charlene Brouwer, and today we're going to talk about a really important and helpful way to build intimacy as a couple, using guided conversations. Now, this is a really helpful tool, and I think it's underutilized. We've been doing these kind of guided conversations for 17 years as a couple, and we still do them today. In fact,
it's a long time.
Yeah, just yesterday we went through this guided conversation as part of our weekly date. We have a date coffee in the morning. So, quick introductions. I'm Mark Brouwer, pastor, and I have also been working for a number of years, helping people deal with sexual struggles on a spectrum from struggling with temptation on the one side to full-blown addiction on the other, porn addiction or sex addiction. And I now run a program called the Renewed Man Community. It's for guys who want to build intimacy with their lives, and this is a key component of it. And so what we're going to talk about today, one of the keys in this program is restored and rebuilt intimacy with one's partner, and this is a key part of how we do that.
Yeah, and I'm Charlene Brouwer. I have been married to this guy, Mark, for 36 years. It'll be 36 years next week. And I've been working as a marriage and family therapist for over 10 years. And I work a lot with couples. And I've recently launched a new Facebook group called The Best Marriage Ever. And I've created a customized program to help couples whose marriages are just falling short of where they want them to be. So we'll have links in the notes below this video to both Mark's Renewed Man program and to the Best Marriage Ever Facebook group. As I work with couples, I really encourage them to use this tool that we're going to share with you. And in fact, we'll often go through this guided conversation together in our couples sessions. And we'll explain why this is important for some couples in a minute.
Okay, so 3 reasons why we believe guided conversations are needed today. First, because it's so easy for couples to get busy and distracted and therefore disconnected. And then over time to not be talking about some of the important things that need to get talked about. And this guided conversation is a way to remind you of those topics. Second, we need these conversations because things happen, like slights, frustrations, hurts will come up and will get in the way of couples' intimacy if they don't have the occasion to address them. And so then things will start to build, and then couples will drift from each other, and then resentments will start to become a wall. And then third, we need to do this because individuals, sometimes we're just not even aware of some of these things. And therefore, if we're not aware of them, then we're not really able to talk about them with our partner. So you'll see there's some things that we get brought up in this guided conversation that sometimes it just challenges us to think about, oh yeah, this is what's going on for me. So it becomes the occasion not just to build things as a couple, but also to help us get connected to our own hearts, our own souls individually.
So before we share this acronym that we use, we want to make sure to give proper attribution and credit here. We learned this from Mark and Debbie Laser. They wrote about this in their book, The 7 Desires of Every Heart. And Mark worked with the Lasers for a number of years as the director of training for Faithful and True Ministries. And it was during this time that we were especially helped by using this tool. So let's first go through the acronym Fano, and then we'll talk about how we encourage couples to do this. So the first is F stands for feelings, and you're going to say, this is what I'm feeling right now, or what I've been feeling lately. And this point alone is really helpful. So often we're going about our days and lives without realizing what we're feeling. So to take a moment to really ask ourselves, what am I feeling right now? And to share that with our partner is very helpful. And even though we sometimes have the stereotype that it should be easy for women and maybe harder for men to identify and share their feelings. That's not necessarily true. Often women or men get so busy and stressed out that we're just, kind of in a machine mode, not thinking about our emotions. So it's just helpful for both men and women to take that moment to actually cultivate the ability to identify and name our feelings.
All right. So then the A is affirmation. And this is probably the most fun part of the conversation, because this is where we affirm our partner for something, either something that they did, like we're expressing gratitude, it's a thanks, or it could also be like affirming something about them, like something that you notice they're good at or whatever. And what I notice about affirmation is that oftentimes in the busyness of life, we don't do this enough. It's almost, I wouldn't say universally, but for many couples, it's almost hard to do this too much. We generally don't do it enough, affirming our partner for something that we appreciate about them.
Yes, and oftentimes we're like eager for the other person to get to the A part because we want to hear that affirmation.
Right.
Okay, the next letter is N, stands for needs. And this is where we express what we need. It can be what we need in general in life, like I need to start getting to bed earlier, or it could be something, maybe ideally something that you need from your spouse. Sometimes maybe there's something that you need help with from them in some way. Now, when we learned this from Mark and Debbie, they really emphasized that this is an important thing to be communicating. And I've seen it in our marriage and with other couples that all too often we don't express clearly what it is we need from our partner. We maybe assume that they know or can read our minds, which they can't. And then we'll get frustrated. And they don't do the thing that we need them to do because we haven't expressed it or asked them to. So during this guided conversation, including needs in it, it's very helpful because it forces us to consider what it is that we need. And this can take courage to express what we need from our partner, but it's very important. And this gives us the opportunity to express that.
Okay. Then the O stands for own. And own is an interesting word. It can encompass a couple of things. First, it can be an apology, like a guided conversation gives us a chance then to think through the past little while, since we've had a conversation like this. Is there anything that I have done or said that I shouldn't have, or maybe something that I could have or should have done, but I didn't do? So it's the occasion then to apologize. But notice it's not apology, it's own, because there's another thing that can sometimes happen. And in fact, like in our case, I think this is where we go mostly with it. It's that we own something that it's not necessarily something that we did that was morally wrong, but it was just something that it was difficult for our partner, or we recognize something is challenging for our partner.
And we recognize we take responsibility.
Right, for our part in it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when couples are in conflict, or in any kind of conflict, I see this in the church as well, that we get really wrapped up in wanting to be who's right and who's wrong, and I shouldn't apologize for that because that wasn't wrong what I did. Okay, forget that. Just shut up about that. The question is, can you have the compassion to recognize that whatever you did, whether it was wrong or not, whether you had good intentions or not, that what you did made things difficult for your partner. It's like connecting to compassion. And so you might say, I own that I have been working a lot lately and I haven't been around much, or I own that I've been kind of distracted and quiet. That kind of thing just allows you to take responsibility, like Charlene said, for things that are important and challenging for you as a couple. And once again, there are times where we actually need to apologize And by including this in a regular, pattern or sequence of conversations as a couple, it gives you the chance to get those things out and keep them, from becoming bigger and bigger things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're able to stay current with each
Yeah,
other.
staying current,
not
exactly.
let resentments build up.
Yep.
So, okay, how do you go about this? How do you do a conversation like this? So the way we recommend and the way we learned from Mark and Debbie is we recommend that one person go through the acronym at a time, and then the other person is listening, and then you switch spots, okay? So I would share what I'm feeling, an appreciation, a need, and an own with Mark. He's listening. And
sometimes asking, sometimes
Yeah,
commenting as well. We'll get to that in
right.
just a little bit.
Sometimes maybe clarifying, asking for clarification. Another question that we get is, how long should this take? How long do you go, or how in depth do you go? And this really, it depends on you and your relationship and kind of where you're at, or maybe just where you're at with your schedule. For couples that I'm working with that are very highly conflicted, but I'm having them practice this, I would probably ask them to just go through the list, listen to the other person, and each person go through it, and not necessarily go in depth more on anything. Just do the basics, right? Then other times, like for Mark and I, we've been doing this for over a decade, almost 2 decades. It can be a nice way to, touch base initially, but then maybe there are areas in the Fano that we want to go more in depth on. And so we can do that. So another question too that we get from couples is, do you do this face to face, or, can you do it on the phone? Can you do it by text? Always, the best is always in person. That's, shoot for that. If one of you's traveling in your way, then I'd say a phone conversation Fano is better than no Fano, and text would be like last resort, but hey, sometimes maybe that's what's needed.
I would say we have never done it over text.
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
So
So
you mentioned
either
that.
just phone or, through like FaceTime or whatever. But again, maybe that's more of a style that other couples would do, and that's cool. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Then the other question would be that people will often ask, how often? How often would you do this? And, again, it depends on what you feel comfortable with. We would generally encourage couples to do this at least weekly. We, over the years, have done it pretty much at least weekly, and generally try to do it more than that. And as part of the Renewed Man program, we encourage people to take a weekly date, whether that be evening date or morning coffee. That's what we do, where you have that. There's a set aside time, and you go through the Fanos conversation. What often happens when we do this as part of let's say a date night, is that you're reconnecting if you've, let's say, been busy. And oftentimes we'll find that when we're sharing feelings, we're reminded of news. There's new information. This happened, which we hadn't had a chance to talk about before. So that happens. And then the other thing that will happen is that we talked about this earlier, that you might ask questions, or it might bring up observations from the other person. So in this case, it's instead of just a monologue, it becomes a conversation. It's a conversation starter almost. So before we wrap this up, a couple of thoughts about why couples struggle with this. Because some couples do struggle with Fanos conversations, and some couples are resistant to it. So the first, people sometimes are resistant to this because it feels stilted or forced. It doesn't seem like a real conversation because it's regimented. And I'm not sure what to say to that, other than I get it. It's been a long time since we started doing this, but I think I remember feeling that was a little weird when we were first doing it, like this guided thing that we're quote unquote supposed to do. But after you do it a couple times, I think you get over that, especially if you see the value in it. And again, if this issue of it feeling too regimented and weird to you, if that's a deal, then maybe it would be helpful to have a little bit more conversation and back and forth and asking questions and stuff. Then it does feel like a conversation you're having that has points you want to keep getting to, rather than a monologue you're running through.
Mm-hmm. I think what that just made me think of is one of the cool things about using a format like this is you touch base on some really important things in a short amount of time. Yeah. And you're guaranteed that if you say, let's do a Fano conversation, you're going to be able to touch base on those 4 things. Whereas if you're just going about your daily life and, hey, let's talk, you might not bring up a need.
Right.
You may not
You
give
might
an
not own
affirmation.
something, right?
So
Yep.
I like that you're guaranteed that this conversation will contain.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Another issue that might come up is that there's a lot of conflict and tension underneath the surface that a couple needs help with. And this might be why a couple could struggle with having these conversations, because there's a bigger issue going on. One might be that, they're not dealing with the real source of the problem, so they don't want to do the Fano conversation, or they're not being 100% honest in what they're sharing. And they might start a Fano conversation and trigger each other and then get into a big argument. So this is where I believe the Best Marriage Ever program that I've made available can be very helpful. Sometimes as couples, I would say most of the time as couples, we get into what we might call a dance, or you might call it your cycle. Like, this is just what we always get into every time. This is what happens in us. It's kind of a familiar pattern where we get triggered into anger and we start to say critical things. We get angry, we shut down. And so then instead of bringing us closer together, the conversations we have can actually be pulling us apart. And so if that's going on, you need to get with someone who can help you deal with those conversations. Somebody who can serve like a referee, if you want to call it that, to help you listen and truly understand each other. That's really important.
All right, so there you have it, Fano conversations. And hope that you like this, hope this is helpful. Most importantly, hope you try it.
Yes.
Don't knock it till you try it, and don't evaluate until you've done it a few different times. And do this and let us know how it goes. Thanks.
Thank you.